What's up, fantasy football community, Disco Ball Nation? I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Week 7's here. Thursday night football is tonight. Let's talk to you guys about everything you need to know about tonight's game. First and foremost, the matchup is the Denver Broncos, who are 3-point favorites coming into New Orleans. It's Sean Payton's return game to New Orleans. I don't think, everybody's going to be super excited about Sean Payton coming back. Some beat reporters even wrote that he kind of left them high and dry. Anyways, it's exciting. The over-under is 37. A lot of injuries, but we'll tell you guys how to navigate not just, your fantasy football perspective, but also your just how to approach your pick'ems, your props, things like that. So we're just going to preview the matchups positionally and try to make this as quick as possible and give you guys as much information as we possibly can. Let's start with the quarterback matchup. We have Bo Nix against Spencer Rattler. If you're looking at what the Saints allow, they allow 0.83 passing touchdowns per game. 36.83 pass attempts, 23.83 pass completions, 277.5 pass yards. If we compare that to Bo Nix's props, Bo Nix is currently at 194.5 passing yards. He should easily surpass that. 18.5 completions. Once again, we said that the Saints allow 23.83 completions per game. Last 5 out of 6 weeks, Bo Nix has absolutely smashed the over on the 18.5 completions. It's one of my favorite props. His rushing yards is at 27.5. Longest rush is at 11.5. I don't mind either one of those. I will definitely stagger them when I'm creating my drafters pick'em props here. And then his pass plus rush is 224.5. And I would definitely be inclined to go with that one. If we're looking at what the Broncos defense allow, see if there's any advantageous matchups here for the New Orleans Saints quarterback, the rookie quarterback with his second matchup. The Broncos defense allows 0.83 passing touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks on average, 31.83 pass attempts per game, 20.5 pass completions, and 190.67 pass yards per game. With that being said, Spencer Rattler's props is currently at 183.5 passing yards, 18.5 completions, 21.5 rushing yards, 10.5 longest rush, 213.5 pass plus rush yards, 0.5 interceptions. I don't have enough information on Spencer Rattler in order to bet on him, so I'm not going to bet on him. I also don't think he's startable. When you're missing, significant receiving targets like Chris Olave, who's out with a concussion, and when you're missing, a Rashid Shaheed, who's a touchdown machine, who could be out for the rest of the season, we still are waiting on information on the scope currently on his meniscus repair. If it's a full repair, then he's out for the season. If it's just a scope, then he should be back at some point this season. Regardless, things are looking dire. Things are not looking pretty there, and Derek Carr is going to be out for the next little bit. There's just not enough information on the current Saints situation for me to want to bet on them, so I won't. Let's talk about the next matchup. We got the running back matchup. We got Javonte Williams. We got Alvin Kamara. Now, Javonte Williams, quote unquote, is on the hot seat for fumbleitis, and we should see some production from Audric Estime. Regardless, let's talk about the matchup. Let's talk about where we can find outlier advantages and what we can bet on. So currently, the Saints defense allows on average against opposing running backs 0.83 rush touchdowns, 111 rushing yards, which is the 10th most advantageous matchup on the week. 4.33 receptions to opposing running backs, which is the 17th most advantageous matchup, and 42.83 receiving yards. Now, I will say this, right? His longest reception is currently at 9.5. You see a significant discrepancy between 4.33 receptions and 42.83 receiving yards. I like the longest reception here for Javonte Williams, 9.5 longest reception. We could probably see the smash at the beginning of the first quarter with the check down king checking the ball down to Javonte Williams. So I really like that prop. I'm going to definitely smash the over on that prop for sure. And then if we're looking over on the other side, we got Alvin Kamara, who should see an increased workload with the vacancy of the names that we mentioned earlier at the receiver position. The Broncos defense has allowed against opposing running backs on average 0.5 rush TDs per game, 91.67 rush yards per game, 4.5 receptions, 32.5 receiving yards. If we're looking at Alvin Kamara's props currently, he's at 67.5 rushing yards. I kind of like the over on that, especially if we're looking at, there's potentially a 25-yard outlier there. So that's a pretty good probability of that hitting. He's probably going to face heavier boxes though. So definitely be aware of that. I wouldn't necessarily put a heck of a lot on that prop, but I definitely will stagger it in. If we're looking at receptions, the 13th most advantageous matchup when it comes to receptions for running backs, 4.5 receptions. There's no receiving prop currently for Alvin Kamara, but if it does pop up, it's probably going to be around 4.5 receptions. I would smash the over just based on him being an outlier and one of the only healthy targets that's available for Spencer Rattler. And then if we're looking at receiving yards, it's at 32.5 receiving yards. His receiving yards is at 36.5. I don't love the over. I don't love the longest receptions. Alvin Kamara is definitely startable in fantasy. So is Javonte Williams, but the Alvin Kamara props I don't really like. Once again, I do like the longest reception for Javonte Williams. And if we're going to look at the wide receiver matchup, we got Cortland Sutton versus Bub Means. Bub Means has been thrown to the wolves, so to speak. Kind of wish that the Saints kept A.T. Perry because right now it's Bub Means and it is Cedric Wilson. With that being said, if we're looking what the Broncos defense allow on average to the wide receiver position, they allow 10.33 receptions to the wide receiver position on a weekly basis, which is not very advantageous. It's 22nd out of 32. If we're talking about wide receiver receiving yards, the Broncos defense allows 113.17 receiving yards. And if we're talking about, which is 29th, which is the third worst matchup on the week. And if we're talking about receiving touchdowns, it is the worst matchup on the week at 0.17 receiving touchdowns to opposing wide receivers. Bub Means, even though he is in line to receive a lot of volume, I don't like him as a start this week. If we're looking at his current props here on Drafters Fantasy, if you guys want to tail any of these props, one, make sure you use promo code DISCO to double your initial deposit dollar for dollar up to $100 Rooskies. Two, I am not liable for any of your losses. If you have any gambling problems, make sure you seek help and only gamble what you can afford to lose. So currently, they actually added his receiving props as I'm looking at it right now. So currently, his receiving yards prop is at 35.5. I think that is something doable, and I will stagger it into a couple of my tickets. If we're looking at his receptions, it's currently at 3.5 receptions. He should receive volume, but I don't necessarily love it. If we're talking about longest receptions, that's 16.5 receiving yards. If we're averaging out, the receptions to receiving yards on average, you're looking at 10 to 11 receiving yards per reception. It's doable, but I don't love it. And I know Patrick Surtain is out, but I don't think Bub Means is going to be him this week. But once again, I could be wrong. I'm just betting on what I'm betting on. You know what I mean? If we look over on the Denver Broncos wide receiver, Cortland Sutton, he has a pretty decent matchup this week. I think he's startable, and I think he's a top 25 wide receiver on the week. The Saints defense allows on average to the wide receiver position 14.33 receptions. They allow the fifth most, which is fifth most. They also allow the fifth most receiving yards to opposing wide receivers at 177.17 receiving yards, and the 27th most to opposing wide receivers at 0.5 receiving touchdowns per game. I don't like him for an anytime touchdown, but if there's anybody I'm going to bet on for an anytime touchdown in this game, I believe it's going to be Cortland Sutton or Bo Nix. One or the other. I think somebody is going to get in the end zone. I think it's going to be a very low scoring affair for what it's worth. If we're looking at his receiving yards prop, I absolutely love it at 46.5 receiving yards. If we're looking at his longest reception prop at 19.5 for his longest reception, I also absolutely love it. I'm definitely going to stagger that into a couple of props where I don't have Bo Nix's passing yards. And then last but not least, let's look at the tight end situation. It's an advantageous matchup for the tight ends over on the Broncos side for Denver there. But it's a dumpster fire there. Greg Dulcich is definitely not him. There's no props currently on drafters for any of the tight ends. Look for the usage to probably go to like a Devon Vele or maybe a Troy Franklin. But I'm not betting on those guys because the usage is not really there. Anyways, it's a very advantageous matchup when we're talking about 5.17 receptions. Looks like Kroll got the vast majority of the snap share last week at around 60%. 2 weeks in a row, we saw Greg Dulcich go with 0. It's the 7th most opportunistic matchup for tight ends, where the Saints allow 56 receiving yards to the opposing tight ends on a weekly basis. And it's the 17th most advantageous matchup where the Saints defense on average against the tight ends allows 0.17 receiving touchdowns. And then if we look over on Juwan Johnson's side, I like Juwan Johnson a heck of a lot this week. I think he's startable, especially if you got Ferguson, who's out on a bye week, or Cole Kmet, who's out on a bye week. Say you got an impending injury and Evan Ingram's out. I wouldn't be hesitant to play Juwan Johnson here. I think we might see a Juwan Johnson breakout game. The Broncos defense allows on average to opposing tight ends 5.67 receptions per game to opposing tight ends, which is the 7th most advantageous matchup this week. They also allow the 16th most advantageous matchup at 45 receiving yards to opposing tight ends, and 17th most advantageous matchup for tight ends in terms of receiving touchdowns at 0.33 receiving touchdowns. His props are currently 27.5 receiving yards. I like that more than the longest reception, but also like the longest reception. I'm definitely willing to bet on these. And now if we come together, let's share our screen here. And let's put together a little bit of a pick'em ticket. All right. So we said that we like the 18.5 completions over for Bo Nix. We like Javonte Williams' longest reception. We like Cortland Sutton's receiving yards. And we like Juwan Johnson's over on his receiving yards. We're going to put $5. $5 turns into 50 because if you hit 4 props, it's going to 10x your money. If you hit 8, it's going to 100x your money. Once again, if you guys want to tail, make sure you use promo code DISCO on Drafters Fantasy to double your initial deposit dollar for dollar. We're going to lock that in. If you guys want to tail, once again, make sure you do that at your own risk. Oh, Javonte Williams' longest reception is currently not available. Okay, so here's what we'll do. We'll take off the completions here for Bo Nix, and we'll put in his rushing yards instead. And we're going to lock that in. Oh, the Javonte, whatever. Anyways, guys, that's the locks. That's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're going to be putting out, that's just game 1. We're going to be putting out a video like this for every single game on the week. So make sure you guys, 1, if you like the video, like the freaking video. 2, smash the subscription. There's a lot of work that goes into this, guys, and I'm really trying to put up more content. We're going to be live tonight, which is October 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern time, going over our locks and our props, stardom situms, all that with my Mind is a Weapon Fantasy Football Sleazeball. And we'll also be live at 6 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday, going over all the matchups, talking about our favorite props, start sits, answering all of your questions. And we're going to go over the DFS slate. Appreciate you guys. Remember, smash the subscribe button. Really does go a long way and helps us out a heck of a ton. Peace.